Karen shoved my pregnant cousin on the sidewalk. 10 minutes later, SEALs surrounded her. My name is Reese Holloway. I never thought I'd see blood on a sidewalk in Sunview Ridge, especially not my cousin Naomi's. We moved here last year, chasing quiet. Naomi's pregnant with her first child. I'm her cousin and her protector since childhood. She's a teacher, gentle as they come. We just wanted peace. But Sunview Ridge had Karen, and Karen ran a fake HOA. She called herself President Wellington, marched up and down the block like she owned it. She fined people for having flower pots she didn't like, harassed delivery drivers, and once threatened to sue a teenager for sidewalk chalk. We kept our heads down until last Tuesday. Naomi was walking slowly, carefully, clutching her stomach as she passed Karen's house. Karen was trimming hedges with that sour look on her face. She saw Naomi, stormed up, and shouted something about loitering on her property. Naomi gently replied, "It's public sidewalk, ma'am." That's when Karen shoved her. I heard the scream before I saw her fall. Naomi landed hard on concrete. Her dress tore. Her elbow scraped raw. She cried out in pain, holding her belly, eyes wide with fear. I froze. Then I sprinted. Karen shouted at me, clipboard in hand. She threatened me. Call security, but I didn't call security. I texted one word now. 10 minutes later, the SEAL team arrived. You see, I'm a Navy veteran, and my best friend, Leo, still serves in the shadows. That week, his unit happened to be doing low-profile training near the ridge, and he was bunking at my house. I told him about Karen's escalating threats. He said, "Let me know if she crosses the line." She did. The unmarked black SUV screeched to a halt. Doors flung open. Leo stepped out, vest strapped tight. 3 others fanned out behind him like a storm front. Karen backed up fast. All color drained from her face. One of the SEALs barked, "Step away from the woman. Do it. Now." Neighbors came out, cameras rolling. Karen tried to speak something about property rights and civic duty, but Leo shut it down. "This woman is injured. You assaulted a pregnant civilian. You're done talking." She screamed. It didn't help. By the time paramedics arrived, Naomi was stable but shaken. Karen was in zip cuffs on the curb, wailing. Her fake HOA badge was confiscated. Her garden shears evidence. But the story didn't end there. Because what we uncovered next, what Karen had built behind the curtain of her clipboard, was even uglier. By sunset, Karen was gone, hauled off in the back of a sheriff's SUV, still protesting like she was the mayor. But something about the way she screamed, "I have files, I have the right," you'll see, stuck with me. It wasn't just delusion, it was certainty. Like she believed she wasn't acting alone. I stayed with Naomi in the ER while she clutched my hand tighter than I'd ever known her to. The baby was okay, thank God. Minor contusions, elevated stress levels, but stable. Naomi didn't cry until the doctor told her the heartbeat was still strong. When she finally did, it wasn't fear, it was anger. "I was just walking," she whispered. I wasn't even near her yard. I nodded, jaw tight. "She's done. But I think there's more." Naomi looked at me, eyes sharper than they'd been in weeks. "Find it." And so I did. The next morning, I went back to the sidewalk. Blood still stained the cracks. A torn scrap from Naomi's dress fluttered under a bush. The entire street felt quieter. People peeked through blinds but didn't come out, like they were waiting to see who would speak first. That was me. I walked to Karen's house. The HOA office sign was still taped to her garage door like it meant something. I knocked, no answer. Then I checked her mailbox, and that's when I saw it. A copy of an HOA violation notice, dated last week. The addressee, George Lindholm, violation unauthorized fence modification. Fine $2,300. George's house was 5 blocks down. He was a retired dentist who mostly kept to himself. His fence white picket, like the rest of ours. I didn't think he even knew what HOA stood for, so I paid him a visit. He opened the door slowly, confusion on his face. Reese, mind if I ask about this? I held up the notice. His face fell. Again, he stepped outside, motioned me around back. There, in a pile by his trash cans, were 6 more violation letters dating back 3 months. Every one of them signed. Karen Wellington, acting HOA president. Didn't you report her? I asked. I tried. Sheriff's office said it was a civil matter. Said if it's a real HOA, it's internal. If it's fake, it's not their jurisdiction. I didn't want trouble. I clenched my fists. Turns out, George wasn't the only one. By noon, I'd spoken with 8 neighbors, all fined, all harassed, all threatened with made-up bylaws. She even towed someone's car for overnight street parking. That's when I realized Karen didn't just act like she ran the neighborhood. She had created an empire of fear. She printed official-looking letters, forged ordinance numbers, and threatened lawsuits. She ran a website, sunview.org, with no legal registration, and she never once filed with the county as an official HOA. But she collected dues, thousands of dollars in checks made out to her box. Naomi had been her first physical victim, but dozens were victims in silence. That night, I showed Leo everything. He listened in silence, then said, "We need to dig deeper." We started with her website. It looked clean, slick, even rules, bylaws, a contact page, but the footer had a link to her payment portal. It rerouted to a Stripe account registered under Sunview Property Enforcement LLC. I ran a reverse business lookup. It didn't exist. Leo pulled up a list of shell entities and hit something: 3 other LLCs tied to a dummy address downtown. Names like Civic Edge Operations, Compliance Watchers, and Better Block Community Council. All led back to Karen Wellington. She'd been running scams across 4 neighborhoods, collecting fake dues, imposing citations, threatening lawsuits, and then flipping houses under market by scaring owners into selling. My stomach turned. She wasn't just a tyrant. She was running a full-fledged suburban extortion racket. That was the moment we decided this wasn't just about Naomi anymore. It was about every neighbor too scared to fight back, and we were going to end it. But justice wouldn't come through a sheriff's call. It needed proof, pressure, and people. We needed more than Leo's SEAL team. We needed a neighborhood uprising. So I called the first meeting. I sent anonymous flyers in mailboxes. Did Karen find you? You're not alone. Sunview Park, Sunday, 4 p.m. Bring receipts. By the end of that week, nearly 40 people showed up. Some had bank statements. Others had photos of citations, fake patrols, even a spreadsheet one neighbor had secretly compiled. She'd tracked Karen's patterns for months. And at the center of it all, one signature, KW. In bold, Sharpie ink. We were ready to move. But Karen wasn't done yet. Karen Wellington returned to Sunview Ridge exactly 12 days after she shoved my cousin to the ground. Not in cuffs, not in shame, in a pantsuit. She strutted into the neighborhood like nothing had happened, chin high, clipboard back in hand, and a smirk stretched across her powdered face. Her first stop, Naomi's driveway. "Consider this your final warning," she announced, her voice piercing the morning air. "This neighborhood doesn't allow unregistered gatherings or lawsuits based on hearsay." Naomi stood her ground, 6 months pregnant and unshaken. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." Karen tilted her head like a hawk watching a mouse breathe its last. "You will be." The very next morning, I was served a civil harassment countersuit filed by Karen Wellington against me, Naomi, and 3 of our neighbors. The complaint claimed defamation, trespassing, and conspiracy to damage her reputation and business. Leo read the entire stack of documents over coffee, his jaw tightening with each page. This isn't a lawsuit. It's a smokescreen, a panic move. He was right, but it meant we were headed to court. The courtroom smelled like cheap sanitizer and dried sweat. It wasn't a high-profile trial, just a preliminary hearing in front of a county judge. But for us, it felt like the Super Bowl. Karen showed up with a high-dollar attorney from out of town and a smug confidence that made me want to tear the fluorescent lights off the ceiling. Our side, we had the truth. And a USB drive. The judge, a no-nonsense black woman named Judge Rosalind Ayers, called the room to order. Miss Wellington, you are countersuing for civil harassment. Mr. Holloway, you and your cousin are accusing the plaintiff of running a fraudulent HOA and assault. Let's begin. Karen's lawyer jumped in immediately, painting her as a community organizer. Ms. Wellington simply tried to bring order to a disorganized neighborhood. She never claimed to be a government entity. All transactions were voluntary. The so-called assault, a misunderstanding. During a verbal disagreement, I nearly stood, but Naomi squeezed my hand. Then it was our turn. We began with video. Leo had discreetly pulled footage from ring cameras, sidewalk cams, even a drone Naomi's husband flew on weekends, on screen. The courtroom watched Karen berate teenagers, harass delivery drivers, and finally shove Naomi. There was no ambiguity. The judge's jaw locked tight. Then we pulled up screenshots from her fake HOA website, complete with the fake bylaws, the fake citation codes, and the striped transactions. The judge leaned forward. Are you telling me this website collected payment under a legally non-existent homeowners association? Yes, Your Honor, I said. And here's where the money went. Leo stood, stepping up with receipts. Karen flinched, because that's when everything unraveled. Through her LLCs, we traced the payments from Sunview Ridge to 3 other neighborhoods, places where homeowners had been cited for dirty windows, unauthorized flowers, or no visible American flag on federal holidays. And every complaint, every fine was signed Community Enforcement Liaison, which we proved Karen made up. Then Naomi spoke. She told the court how Karen threatened her during a morning walk, shouted inches from her face, and shoved her belly first into a sidewalk. She didn't cry. Her voice didn't waver. The entire courtroom sat in silence. Even the stenographer stopped typing. Judge Ayers finally turned to Karen. Do you deny pushing this woman? Karen stood. She challenged me. She got in my way. That's a safety issue. A safety issue, the judge echoed. Yes, she could have been, Karen paused. Anyone except she was a pregnant woman on a public sidewalk, Judge Ayers said coldly. And your organization, Karen cut in, is a private initiative to improve property value, which was never registered, filed, or approved. Karen's attorney whispered urgently, but it was too late. The judge ordered an immediate injunction on all Karen's business operations. Her accounts were frozen, her website taken down. But that wasn't the twist. That came when Leo stepped forward and handed the judge a manila folder. This isn't just fraud, he said. We found something worse. Inside were emails, threatening emails. Karen had hired private investigators to dig into Naomi's hospital records, my military background, even George's retirement pension. One email referenced a payment to a contractor for pressure tactics. The judge's eyes widened. Are you alleging this woman hired intimidation services? Leo nodded. She paid someone to break George's fence, to make it look like vandalism, to pressure him into selling. Karen leapt to her feet, furious. This is a setup. I am the victim. The judge slammed her gavel. Miss Wellington, you're done. I am forwarding all materials to the district attorney. This court is done entertaining your fiction. Karen didn't sit back down because 2 deputies were already at her side. She didn't leave the courtroom that day. She was arrested, charged with fraud, assault, impersonation of a civil authority, and conspiracy to extort property. And suddenly, the woman with the clipboard didn't look powerful anymore. She looked terrified. The neighborhood buzzed for days. Reporters showed up. The sheriff confirmed investigations into multiple neighborhoods. Karen's face made local news under the headline, Clipboard Queen Faces Criminal Charges. But we weren't finished. When Karen was taken away in cuffs, we thought it was over, but it was only the beginning. The days that followed were a blur of news vans, neighborhood gossip, and lawyers knocking on doors. Naomi's name trended locally, and suddenly everyone wanted an interview. She turned them all down. This isn't about me, she said. It's about how many others this happened to. And she was right. Because the more we dug into Karen's shell companies, the more horrifying the picture became. There wasn't just one fake HOA. There were 7, each one with a different name, each with different presidents, but they all followed the same formula: scare the elderly, threaten families with fines, forge official-looking citations, and collect dues. In 2 of the neighborhoods, elderly residents had sold their homes below market after being told they were violating community standards. One woman had even moved into assisted living after too many citations made her feel unsafe. Naomi and I sat in her living room, baby monitor humming softly in the background. She rested her hands on her belly and asked, "How many people were scared into giving up their homes?" Leo answered, "Too many. But I know how we stop it." That week, we launched something new. We called it Neighborhood Truth, a volunteer task force. Not flashy, not funded, just neighbors with printers, laptops, and determination. Our goal: expose every fake HOA, every shell company, and every predatory pattern Karen or anyone like her had created. We started by hosting an open meeting at the community park. We didn't know how many would show up, but by the time we rolled out a folding table and plugged in the microphone, over 200 people had gathered. People from Sunview Ridge, Fox Hollow, Mill Pond Estates, Cedarwood Heights, people who had never met each other but were all united by one thing. They'd all been targeted. Some brought citations, others brought tears. One man, a former Marine in a wheelchair, told the crowd how he was fined for having a ramp without aesthetic approval. A Latina mother of 4 spoke through tears about how her children stopped playing outside because Karen's block patrols threatened them for riding bikes on the sidewalk. And then Naomi stood up, 8 months pregnant now, and said into the mic, "I was pushed down because I didn't walk fast enough to please someone with a fake title. But I'm still standing, and I'm not afraid anymore." Applause exploded. But more than that, something clicked. We weren't just victims anymore. We were becoming a movement. The next step was exposure. Leo worked behind the scenes, feeding tips to state-level investigators. We found patterns language used across all the fake HOAs, recurring bank accounts, IP addresses linking their websites. With help from pro bono attorneys and a few cybersecurity volunteers, we mapped the entire web of deceit. It was Karen's empire, but she didn't build it alone. That's when we discovered the name Victor Crane on paper. He was a community consultant, but in truth, Victor had been the one setting up the shell LLCs for Karen. He'd built websites, drafted fake bylaws, even trained neighborhood compliance officers to knock on doors and deliver threats. He was the architect behind the clipboard, and worse, he was still free. We held our second rally a week later, this time at City Hall. Naomi couldn't come. Doctor's orders, but she recorded a message that played through speakers. "Every time we let fear win, we lose a piece of our community. It's time to take it back." I stepped up next, holding a box of documents in one hand. These are the names of 32 homeowners who were targeted by fake HOAs. Some lost money, some lost property, some lost peace of mind, but not one of them is staying silent anymore. The crowd erupted. News stations picked it up. And the DA, he called us the next day. They wanted to press state-level conspiracy charges, but they needed more evidence, specifically Victor's involvement. That's when Leo made the call. He reached out to one of his old SEAL contacts, now working in digital surveillance. A week later, we had recorded phone calls between Karen and Victor. In one, she said, "It's handled. I'll push her just enough to scare her, pregnant or not. The fear is what works." That was it. That was the match in the gasoline. Victor Crane was arrested 3 days later. With him, the entire fraudulent HOA network collapsed. Multiple charges were filed: fraud, racketeering, impersonation of legal authority, elder intimidation, and forced property devaluation. And finally, the neighbors who had been silenced found their voices. We organized town halls, legal aid funds. We partnered with veterans groups, disability rights coalitions, immigrant support networks, because what started as one neighborhood conflict had shown us something bigger. People all across the country were facing the same abuse. Karen wasn't the only one. She was just the first to fall. But even then, as her mugshot aired and Victor's empire crumbled, there was one last test coming. Because 2 nights before the final court hearing, Naomi went into labor. I rushed her to the hospital with Leo driving like he was still in deployment. As nurses wheeled her in, she grabbed my wrist and said, "We win this." For her, we did. The next morning, while Naomi held her baby girl Alina Joy, I stood in court and watched as Judge Ayers sentenced Karen to 9 years behind bars, with full restitution to every victim named in our files. The courtroom didn't cheer. It didn't need to. Justice didn't always shout. Sometimes it breathed quiet and strong in a hospital room nearby. It started with a scream on a sidewalk. It ended with a new law in the state Senate. But in between, a baby girl was born, and everything changed. Lena Joy Holloway entered the world at 3:12 a.m., 2 days before the state hearing that would decide the fate of every fake HOA Karen and Victor had infected. Naomi clutched her daughter like she was holding the sunrise itself. "She'll never be scared to walk her own street," she whispered. "Not if I can help it." I stood by the window, watching the night roll back, and thought she already helped it. While Naomi recovered, I stepped into the role she'd ignited. Our movement, Neighborhood Truth, was no longer just flyers and town halls. We had lawyers, lobbyists, and local candidates wanting to be seen at our events. Our top priority passed the Sunview Act. Named after our own neighborhood, the bill proposed mandatory registration of all HOAs and neighborhood associations with the Secretary of State. Background checks on anyone claiming enforcement powers. Fines and felony charges for impersonation of civic authority. Whistleblower protections for residents reporting HOA fraud or abuse. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it scared the hell out of people like Victor Crane. On the day of the vote, I wore a gray suit Naomi once said made me look like a congressman. I didn't feel like one. My hands still bore scratches from fixing fences. My voice hoarse from late-night meetings. But I stood in that marble hallway with a binder full of signatures and a fire in my gut. Inside, the committee chambers buzzed with tension. Lawyers for real estate developers tried to stall. One suit even claimed that residents benefit from firm leadership, even if unofficial. That's when I stood up and said, leadership without accountability is just tyranny with nice landscaping. The room fell silent, and then it passed, unanimously. The news broke like lightning. Sunview Act signed into law. Fake HOA crackdowns begin over the next 3 weeks. State officials launched surprise audits in over 40 neighborhoods. Multiple arrests followed. 4 other Karen-style figures were charged. Some tried to run. Others lawyered up. But they all had one thing in common. They underestimated the people they thought were powerless. Sunview Ridge changed, too. Without Karen's iron grip, the neighbors got together and did something radical. We started talking. Instead of an HOA, we formed the Sunview Commons Council, a volunteer group of residents who met monthly. With no power to fine, no clipboards, and no enforcement zone. Just neighbors helping neighbors. George, the retired dentist, painted a mural on his fence, a sunflower blooming from cracked concrete. For Lena, he said, the former Marine who was fined for his ramp, he's now our accessibility chair. And Naomi. She became the face of something bigger. 3 months later, she gave her first public speech, baby Lena in her arms, at the National Homeowner Protections Conference. Her voice shook, but her message didn't. A fake HOA tried to silence us, tried to scare us, but it only made us stronger. We don't need a clipboard to care about our neighborhood. We need courage. We need community. And we need to remember that the sidewalk belongs to everyone. When she finished, the room stood, not for applause, for acknowledgement. We never saw Karen again. She filed one last appeal from prison, blaming media distortion and emotional bias. It was denied. Victor struck a deal, 5 years in exchange for testimony against other bad actors. It turned out he wasn't a mastermind, just a man who saw fear as a business model. He won't get to see it work again. Sometimes I sit on my porch and watch Lena take her first wobbly steps on the same sidewalk Karen once made dangerous. She doesn't know that history yet, She just knows that when she falls, Naomi's there to pick her up, and the whole neighborhood smiles with her because we remember what it costs to reclaim our peace. Sunview Ridge isn't perfect. We've still got squirrels in the gutters and weeds in the cracks, but we've got something Karen never had: trust. No fines, no threats, no secrets, just neighbors, rebuilding in the sunlight. If you're reading this and someone in your neighborhood is using fear to gain power, don't stay quiet. Document everything. Ask questions. Organize. You're not alone. You don't need a badge to protect your street. You just need a voice. And sometimes, one small push, whether into fear or into justice, is all it takes to reveal who people really are. Choose to push forward. The end.